heading into the new year, EA has a lot of ground to cover to regain a spot at the top of the most respected video game companies. They've got a long way to go. They've got a lot of problems, but their biggest hurdle is one I haven't seen brought up yet. Thanks for tuning in, and welcome to Downward Thrust as we discuss the biggest problem with EA that no one seems to be talking about. If they pull off Anthem, it can be a phenomenal, free-play style open-world game that will be for the long-haul, gear-driven enthusiast, with a nice sprinkling of RPG layered on top. It could definitely satisfy a huge group of gamers, especially those that like a little bit of both, because that's what Anthem actually looks like. I actually think that even though EA is known for kind of messing up our games and doing stuff that we don't like in terms of like extra monetization and season passes and just making games a little bit more about the business and about the gamer, I still have a good amount of faith in BioWare to deliver a great game. It all depends on how much EA influences the development of BioWare through Anthem. Of course, I'm talking about how much control they've tried to hold at EA's side during the entire length of Anthem's development. This can obviously funnel down to so many aspects of making a video game, but I think the core principles remain the same, and that is this fact alone, that a developer should be spearheading the creative process at which the game is developed. If that's what happens, and the publisher doesn't get too greedy with how they want to roll out that game to the public, then we've got a win-win on our hands. This is, of course, a very optimistic, hypothetical situation that would be the best possible scenario for all of us. If that doesn't happen, then we have to ask ourselves a question. What is EA going to fall back on for future titles? Because if you take a look at what EA is currently offering in 2019, beyond Anthem, it's actually not much. This is where I believe the real problem is with EA at the moment that no one is talking about. Sure, everyone's talking about how EA does things poorly in the video game industry. Yeah, sure, everyone talks about how their stock price has taken a pretty deep dive in 2018, although it is a little bit on the up and up recently. Yes, people also talk about how the relationship of EA towards their developers isn't that good. And yes, people talk about all the time how EA just continually does things in a way that is completely anti-consumer. Everybody talks about these things, right? No matter where you look, these are the common problems people associate with EA in terms of the video game industry. Again though, here's the bigger problem that no one talks about. What happens if Anthem fails? What fallback does EA actually have to stabilize their business, because it's not doing very good right now? They have to stabilize, right? It's not about what happened in the past. Yeah, of course, EA has done some tremendously stupid things in the past in the video game industry, but companies can find retribution and turn their ships around. It's not about what happens in the short term either. Yeah, of course, today, the decisions that companies make definitely matter. But in an age where so many companies are gravitating away from the one-time transaction model and into the live gaming service model or the progressive revenue model, it's about what happens long-term. As we've seen with games like Rainbow Six Siege, The Division, and to some extent For Honor, games can absolutely mess up early on. So long as they actually make themselves better, more fair, more ethical, better games in the future, game companies can stabilize and still come out on top, both in terms of the bottom line and in the hearts and minds of gamers. I'm with you. Of course, games should definitely be releasing feature-rich and complete and should definitely not suck right out of the gate. But as we've seen, not just recently, people are more than accepting, at least the masses and the casual crowd, of putting more time into those games as they get better. So even if a game has problems early on, the environment at which we develop games today can actually help that game get better, and it sometimes can be okay. And that is where we get into the long-term discussion about video game development, because it's not just about developing video games, it's about creating a brand for these companies to be successful for a long period of time. This is corporate America here we're talking about, not just the video game industry. So in essence, it's not really about what happens beforehand or today, it's about what happens long-term with companies to make them successful. And here's the kicker, if Anthem actually doesn't make it out alive, what does EA's fallback look like? I can tell you what, it doesn't look like very much at all. This is the problem I see nobody talking about. What is EA's long-term strategy in the video game industry beyond 2019? And for me, if I look at what's coming out from EA in the next couple years, honestly, It's on the shoulders of Respawn Entertainment. If Anthem does not do well, and Respawn's games do not do well, there's really not that much coming out from EA in a time where they desperately need some goodwill and high profitability to turn their ship around. Because as we've seen in the last 24 or 16 months, it takes a lot more for EA than just Madden or FIFA for them to succeed in the grander scope of both the video games industry and corporate America. So let's assume their next game, Anthem, takes a nosedive into the dirt and just fails. It would be a horrible thing because I'm very much looking forward to trying out Anthem with an open heart. But for the sake of this discussion, let's just say that everything that could go wrong with Anthem, the live gaming service, the game just being overly grindy, the in-game content not being there, and the story stuff being pushed to the side, which would alienate fans of BioWare, let's assume all that happens, and Anthem just doesn't work out. I hope this does not happen, but if it does, what happens to EA in the next 24 months? Well, they have to make a huge recovery, either on the Anthem side or from their newest games, from Respawn Entertainment, that being Jedi: The Fallen Order, and hopefully Titanfall 3, a game I'm very much looking forward to. Battlefield 5 is just getting started, so there's definitely not going to be another Battlefield game this year. DICE is also working on that extremely long-winded content, so there's not going to be another Battlefront game either. So what other games are there from EA? Sea of Solitude? Is that it? I'd assume that most gamers are looking forward to Jedi: The Fallen Order because they just canceled one of the most recent Star Wars games that people were really looking forward to, the one that was going to be an open world game that was based on the one that Visceral Games started in the first place, Star Wars 1313. Considering that EA has completely blown the opportunity to bring us really great Star Wars games, and the only games that they have brought us have been mobile games and Battlefront 2, the last two games that were released in 2015 and 2017, they've all sucked. Now that the next Star Wars game is going to be The Fallen Order, it had better be good, because they don't have a long time left on the contract with Disney. In fact, they've only got 3 to 4 more years for Star Wars in terms of their license. Guess who's making that game? Respawn Entertainment. In the case that there will not be a Battlefront or a Battlefield game this year, then what's the next first-person shooter that people are really looking forward to from EA? Titanfall. Guess who's making that game? Respawn Entertainment. So the real problem with EA right now is not about the past. It's not about what happened, because things can be amended. It's about looking out towards the future and protecting the things that truly matter, and that is the development of those 2 key games. Here's though where it gets really interesting. Assume that now Anthem is a tremendous success, and most of the subsidiary income that comes from the game is through the live gaming service. Assume that the in-game store just is crazy successful. Assume that Origin Access Premier gets a huge bump in subscriptions. In this instance, now EA has ammunition to pack their future games full of all these integrations and make every game a live game. That would actually be the worst case scenario. I think the best case scenario would be that Anthem is successful because it's a great video game, not because the world populace just goes out and buys all these little trinkets and goodies from the in-game store. That would be actually a catastrophe that could plague their future games, because that sends a message to EA that says, hey, you know what? Do more of this. So that's the catch-22 as far as I can see it. 2019 is basically Anthem forward. This game has a tremendous amount of time, scope, and space, among other releases, to truly bring in an audience, profits, and make itself a very good game. If it doesn't succeed, then EA's only fallback, relatively speaking, is Respawn Entertainment putting out The Fallen Order and, of course, Titanfall 3, which are going to be 2 huge games. And if it does succeed, for the wrong reasons, then those 2 games may have some stuff in them that we don't appreciate. And that's the huge problem with EA right now, this strange pickle that they seem to be in, where if their most exciting, biggest, most anticipated game in a very long time, Anthem, fails, then the only fallback they have is Respawn Entertainment. Because I don't know how much longer the sports gaming market alone is going to be able to carry EA past all the bad blood in this industry. So in my opinion, they had better treat Respawn Entertainment very, very good. Thanks for watching my video today, guys. I really appreciate it. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you guys in our next one. Take care until then.